Excellent. We're back. Hello, everybody. It's me, Nathan Aldridge, your fun cheese guy, your leader in this study session. Thank you for taking the time today to join us. Again, I've got to keep saying all of these are recorded. You're more than welcome. They're free to access. You could share them with anybody else you know taking the exam. If you don't watch them, you're the one that's missing out. Okay. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to go through the 801 module. I asked you through email last time in your study, through our study communications, to go through and go ahead and read this. So this isn't trying to be me being like a grade school teacher and reading everything to you. But my goal today and through all of these sessions is I'm going to go through the materials that I sent you, and I'm going to highlight important aspects. And I'm going to tell you what may not be as important to help narrow down your field of view. Again, I have no clue what questions are asking on the test. You are still responsible to study everything, but I have a good idea of what's important enough for you to spend time on researching and studying. And hopefully a lot of this information isn't new to you, but just a good refresher for you. Okay, so Module 801, raw materials for cheese making. Give me a thumbs up if you can definitely see my shared screen. Perfect, thank you. I just want to make sure. So I'm going to go through this. If you have this printed out, if you want to print it, you can. But I'm just going to go through. This is a good time for you to take notes. I would grab a pen and a paper and highlight some words because I'm just going to go through this page by page and say, you know what, I would remember this. And that's going to be your hint to make sure you're making a note to look this up and reread it. All right. The basics of milk and milk handling. Milk is a liquid secreted by the mammary glands of female mammals to nourish their young. Again, the American Cheese Society does not think that almond juice and walnut juice or the nut milks are not milk to the American Cheese Society. Only the secretion from a mammary gland from a female mammal is milk. Okay, so that's important. So that is on your test. Boom, there's your answer. You're going to definitely see that. Okay. Most milk consumed in Western countries are from cows. Other important sources are sheep, goats, water buffalo, and camels. They could ask you more about animals that give milk. Not every mammal gives milk, but more than likely with the American Cheese Society, they're going to stick to the main animals that we consume. Okay. All righty. The Milk Quality Improvement Program, Milk Facts. Let's go to ensuring quality and safety. This is very important to our group. The milk processing section contains general information on operating important milk processing. A brief discussion of milk handling to the farm to the processing plant is provided as an introduction to this section. All right. So all of these are definitely what we're going to cover, but heat treatments and pasteurization, that is on the test. Anytime, if you go through, and I would also suggest, again, you look through the best practice guide for cheesemakers. I've sent that to you. It's also on the ACS website. They have charts and graphs. You will have to know 100% all of the different pasteurization temperatures. Make a note. Every one of the pasteurization temperatures you will have to know. They will not try to trick you with Celsius versus Fahrenheit. They'll give you the Celsius and Fahrenheit. You don't have to do the math on that, but you have to know what's high temp, low temp, high temp, fast time, all of that you have to know, okay? To provide the safest quality product to the consumer, the pasteurized milk ordinance, you will need to know that. You will be given the term PMO. It may be in a sentence, but you need to know what the pasteurized milk ordinance is. It provides standard guidelines. It's a document from the United States Department of Health and Human Services and Public Health and the Food and Drug Administration that defines the practices relating to milk parlor and processing plant design, milking practices, milk handling, sanitation, and standards for the pasteurization of grade A milk products. All righty. Milk obtained from the goat, sheep, or cow under sanitary conditions is cooled to 45 degrees Fahrenheit within 2 hours of milking. Make a note of that. So that means when you see the milk truck arriving to the dairy, they're going to need to get that cooled down to 45 degrees Fahrenheit, 7 degrees Celsius. Those degrees that you see right there, 45 Fahrenheit, 7 Celsius, that's how you'll see any temperatures on this exam. Again, you don't have to do the math. They'll always be like that. They're not going to trick you and make the Celsius wrong and the Fahrenheit right, if that makes sense. They're not going to trick you that way. They just want you to know 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. Milk at the plant stored at less than 45 degrees Fahrenheit, the Celsius, is usually processed within 24 hours, but can be held up to 72 hours. There's a small likelihood they'll ask that, but that's almost be getting a little too specific. All right, almost all the milk in the United States is pasteurized, with the exception of some raw milk cheese production and some states that allow the sale of raw milk. Question: why would the United States not want consumers to ingest raw milk? You can hit it in the chat, talk it through, but could you think of anything that's dangerous about raw milk? What would be in that raw milk to make it dangerous? Listeria, there we go. Perfect. Just time it in, like, it's okay, everybody, you can communicate. But the thing is, there's bacteria too. Think about listeria, you have bacteria. So they're just trying to make sure that the milk is safe for human consumption, because eating and drinking raw products can make you sick. I think they should just put a label on it like they do with raw seafood. It's like, it's kind of on you if you want to do it. But how many days does a cheese need to be aged to be sold as a raw milk cheese in the United States? 60. Perfect. There you go. That was, I don't know how they're going to ask that. Again, I don't know the phrasing of the question, but I remember something too that was on my exam in 2018. And it may not be there anymore, but that was definitely a question for me in some shape or form. So Sig, you need to know that. All right, milk composition. The Milk Quality Improvement Program, Milk Facts. Let's see. Let's get over this. The milk composition section. I'm going to keep going. All right, so yeah, the milk composition. You need to know this. So the little graph on the right with this paragraph. In general, the gross composition of cow's milk in the United States is 87.7% water, 4.9% lactose, which is your carbohydrate, your sugar, 3.4% fat, 3.3% protein, and 0.7% minerals. So look at this graph. This is something you may not get asked the percentages. You may get asked, what is the composition of milk? What are the substrates? What is it that makes up milk? And you would need to know that it's water, sugar, fat, protein, and minerals. That is probably more likely going to be on there. So know that. And again, if you see anything on this paper that differs from anything in the best practice guide for cheesemakers, always go with the information that's provided to you from the American Cheese Society. All right. And pop up any questions if you have them. If I can't answer it, we'll find. Carbohydrate, which is the lactose, the general carbohydrate chemistry. Carbohydrates are made up of molecules called saccharides. This is good to know. I feel like this may be too detailed, if that makes sense. So when you're reading through materials, this is good. I don't know if they're going to get so into breaking down like what makes up a carbohydrate. Still read it and still know it. You're still responsible to know it. But I think that may be more of a let's just read over it and get a glance, and then we'll kind of keep moving. Milk carbohydrate chemistry. Milk contains approximately 4.9%. Keep admitting carbohydrates that is predominantly lactose with trace amounts of monosaccharides. Okay, let's keep going. Lactose physical properties. Lactose is dissolved in the serum phase of fluid milk. Lactose dissolved in solution is found in two forms. I think that's going to be too much. I didn't remember anything like that being on my exam. So let's keep moving. Good to know. This, I think, is good milk science, but it's not. I think with only having 150 questions, that they would probably want to ask something else. Lactose crystallization. Let's see. Lactose crystallization occurs when the concentration of lactose exceeds solubility. That's good to know. Again, I would read through this. Probably too much information for you. See how I'm helping you out here? I'm just trying to help narrow down your field of study. The normal pasteurization conditions used for fluid milk have no significant effect on lactose. The higher temperatures used for ultra high temperature, UHT, again, you will see that on your exam. Pasteurization of extended shelf life products and spray drying can cause browning. That may get asked, that's probably too much. I think that's too much. The browning reaction, called the Maillard reaction, occurs between lactose and protein in milk and produces undesirable flavors and colors. There's a chance that could be. Anytime we've got pointed out, like, in any textbook or graph, when you have something pointed out in a little colored block, that's going to be a good reference for you to get to know. Fat. General fat definition and chemistry. Fats are made up from individual fatty acid molecules attached to glycerol, a 3-carbon backbone. Good to know, but again, I feel like this is getting really sciencey, where I think it may be too much for the exam. Do read it, do understand it, but maybe not spend every waking, don't let it keep you up at night, right? Because there are many different fatty acids that can be attached to the backbone, there are many different types of triglycerides or fats. You don't have to know all the triglycerides or fats. I think that's too much. Good to have an understanding, but I feel like that's going to be way, way too much for this particular exam. So we're going to keep going. Again, do read it, please. I'm not saying don't read it, but don't spend as much time on it. Over in the block to the right, the triglycerides are esters of the trihydric alcohol, glycerol, and fatty acids. That's going to be too much. Okay. Milk fat chemistry. Milk contains approximately 3.4% total fat. That's a good fact to know. Milk fat has the most complex fatty acid composition of the edible fats. That's cool. Over 400 individual fatty acids have been identified in milk fat. But you don't have to know the 400 fatty acids, okay? Just know these basic informations. However, approximately 15 to 20 fatty acids make up about 90% of milk fat. I think the important key in this paragraph, milk contains approximately 3.4% total milk fat. That's good to know. Again, keep reading, but that's good. All righty. There are systematic changes in milk fat composition that are due to the stage of lactation and the energy needed in the animal. Early lactation, the animal's energy comes largely from body stores. This is good to know. I think this is fun information. Body stores that are limited fatty acids available for fat synthesis. So the fatty acids used for milk fat production are obtained from the diet and tend to be longer chain. The whole longer chain stuff, I think, is too detailed. I think it's good to read it and have an understanding, but don't spend too much time on it. But think about, early, they will ask questions likely in early lactation and later in lactation. It's good to have an understanding of how animals operate and where they get their fat from in their body, whether they're eating it or they're pulling it from their own stored fat to give it to their baby. It's a good information to have an understanding of. Later in lactation, more of the fatty acids in milk are formed in the mammary gland, so that the concentration of the short fatty acid chains, such as, you don't have to get all that, 4.6, that's too much. One thing about a mammary gland that you need to know, and we'll probably get to it, what is an infection in the mammary gland? What is the infection an animal can get in a mammary gland? There you go, Brooke, coming in hot. I love it. Mastitis. Perfect. That is on your exam. Write that down. You will need to know about mastitis. Awesome. I'm having fun now. Are you having fun? Oh, we're having a good time. But mastitis, definitely something to remember 100%. And there's a lot of information about that in the Best Practice Guide for Cheesemakers. Do you know how I keep pushing you towards that? Wink. All right. Let's keep going. Let's go. Let's keep going. This is good. Triglycerides. All this is great, but I feel like it's going to be really detailed information that you may not need to spend as much time on. Let's look at milk fat physical properties. Milk fat melts over a whole wide range of temperatures from approximately -40 degrees Fahrenheit to 104. This is best illustrated by the firmness of butter at refrigerator temperature versus room temperature. Okay. At refrigerator temperature, butter is approximately 50% solid, but is only about 20% solid at room temperature. This is cool. I don't remember anything about this on the exam. I feel like the temperature of butter in and out of a refrigerator is good to know, but not necessarily going to be on your test. And hopefully, I'm going to keep repeating this, and hopefully, I'm training you in a sense of as you read along to be able to extrapolate the information on your own. But this is how I did it, and I'm trying to give you good advice. Deterioration of milk fat. Milk fat can be degraded by enzyme action, exposure to light, and oxidation. I would remember that. That sounds like a question to me. You see how it gives you three different points to remember? Milk fat can be degraded by enzyme action, exposure to light, and oxidation. So these are things that, besides, these are things that also can affect your cheese. It affects the milk and cheese. Exposure to light, oxidation. If you think about how that affects your cheese and your cheese case, if you deal with that, I would remember that sentence. That could be a question. Each of these processes proceeds through different mechanisms. Enzymes that degrade fat are called lipases. Excuse me for my pronunciation. I remember that. And the process is called lipolysis. That, remember, highlight those words. You will need to know that. Milk lipases come from several sources: the native milk, airborne bacterial contamination, bacteria that are added intentionally for fermentation, and somatic cells present in milk. That whole sentence, that's it. So deterioration of milk fat, I would know this paragraph. All of that is important. They give a couple of key words that you're going to see in your glossary if you've already visited your glossary from the American Cheese Society. Somatic cells. You will need to know somatic cell counts. Go ahead and mark that down, write it down. Anytime you see a graph that states somatic cell counts that are allowable in milk, you'll need to know that. All right. This is, you guys are, oh God, you're getting so much help. Oh my God. And I feel like I'm pronouncing that wrong, and I'm sorry, I'm having an off day. Lipases remove fatty acids from the glycerol backbones of the triglyceride. Good to know. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be a question. Usually the action causes undesirable rancid flavors in milk. Okay, if there's something that causes rancid flavors in milk, you need to remember that. Rancid flavors in milk that get translated and get made into cheese affects all of us in the cheese industry. Therefore, there's a higher likelihood of getting asked a question about that. There you go. That's in the box. Enzymes that degrade fat. There you go. I would remember that. Lipolysis. Light-induced degradation can happen fairly rapidly in milk and produces a characteristic off flavor. The majority of this off flavor is caused by protein degradation. Storing milk in opaque containers minimizes this process. Question: how can you minimize the process of light-induced degradation on milk? Boom, you store it in an opaque container. That's how you read through all this material to make it into a question. And quite honestly, I think as the question writing committee works together to make questions, that's how the process goes along. I've actually set in with that process, so I know the way they're thinking. Okay. We are doing so good. Oh my gosh. Influence of heat treatments on milk fat. Here we go. Milk fat has a wide melting range, right? We went through that at 104 degrees Fahrenheit to 40 degrees Celsius. Typical high temperature short time. So you see this, HTST. They could ask you to define, what does HTST stand for? And they could give you 4 different things to choose from, and you'll need to know high temperature short time. But you'll also need to know what those temperatures are. But that pasteurization conditions do not affect the functional and nutritional properties of milk fat. Higher heat treatments may stimulate oxidation reactions that cause fat degradation in all flavors, but high heat treatments such as ultra high temperature, so UHT, you need to know that, pasteurization, can disrupt the milk fat globule membrane proteins and destabilize the globules, resulting in their coagulation. More about that is knowing what each of those temperatures are. Okay. How we doing? Everybody hanging in there so far? Good, good, good. Protein, general protein definition and chemistry. Here we go. Nice little graph over there. Let's see what's important to us right now. There are many types of proteins, and each has its own amino acid sequence. There are 22 different amino acids that can be combined to form protein chains. Good to know. Probably fun for some of you sciencey types. Probably too much information for the exam. Good to know. So let's keep going. The amino acids within the protein chains can bond across the chain and fold to form three-dimensional structures. This is great. But again, I don't see any questions here. But here we have a question probably popping up. The term denatured, that I would remember. That's important now. Is used when proteins unfold from their native chain or globular shape. Denaturing proteins is beneficial in some instances, such as allowing like easy access to the protein chain by enzyme for digestion, or for increasing the ability of the whey proteins to bind water and provide desirable texture in yogurt production. That paragraph, denatured, remember. That's a good one. That has more pertinent information for the exam than the other paragraphs above. Wunderbar. Milk protein chemistry. Milk contains 3.3% total protein. Milk proteins contain all 9 essential amino acids required by humans. That's pretty cool. Milk is pretty awesome. Milk proteins are synthesized at the mammary gland, but 60% of the amino acids used to build the proteins are obtained from the cow's diet. That'd be a good little fact. Don't know if it's going to be a question, but 60% of the amino acids used to build the proteins are obtained from the cow's diet. Total milk protein content and amino acid composition varies with cow breed and individual animals. That's fair. Casein in whey protein. Ooh, and there we go. Here we go, the block. 2 main types of milk protein. That you need to remember. That's concise information that can be turned into a question and not so bogged down. So remember the 2 main types of milk proteins: casein proteins. They provide opaque whiteness to the milk. They thicken and gel as they coagulate, easily coagulated within acids and enzymes. So casein proteins are important for cheese, yogurt, and sour cream. Definitely remember that. Casein proteins will be on your test. And then whey proteins in clear greenish liquid called whey. There you go. So proteins are found in the casein, which ends up making cheese, and the leftover whey, which again can be consumed, dried, or thrown away. But they form a film along the bottom of the surface of heated milk to prevent, you don't need to know basically that, but know your 2 types of proteins for sure. All right. We're just continuing going on. I love it, I love it, I love it. The casein family of protein consists of several types of caseins. That's good, but again, like, I don't think they're going to get as deep into all the types of caseins. You need to know that there's proteins and know the 2 types of those. Keep that going. All righty, we're going to keep rocking and rolling, my friends, my cheesy friends. The serum whey protein family consists of approximately, see here, we're getting into more. I think that's too much. That's way too much information. Don't be intimidated. Let's keep going. Whey proteins do not contain phosphorus by definition, but do contain a large amount of sulfur-containing amino acids. That's good to know, but I feel like you're going to get asked other questions. I feel like that's just going to be so much. These form disulfide bonds within the protein, causing the chain to form a compact spherical shape. That's cool, but wait a minute, man. That's just going to be so much. Let's keep going. The functions of many whey proteins are not clearly defined, and they may not have a specific function in milk. Let's keep going. That's good, but I feel like all of this is like, it's good to know. Again, always read it, but I feel like that's going to be too much. I feel like this is too deep. Protein physical properties. Let's see if we know about this. The caseins in milk form complexes called micelles. Yes, you need to know that. Yes. Micelles. Micelles. Yes, you need to know that. That are dispersed in the water phase of milk. The casein micelles consist of subunits of different caseins held together by calcium phosphate bridges on the inside, surrounded by a layer of 6 casein, which helps to stabilize the micelle in the solution. That's a lot, but that's more surface level information that could be asked about. Especially knowing the simple fact that the caseins in milk form complexes called micelles. Boom, good to know. Here we go. So the casein micelles are spherical and are 0.04 to 0.3 in diameter. You don't need to know that. That's what I mean by too much. Are you hopefully you're picking up what I'm dropping down and understanding that once you get to a spot that's just so sciencey, don't let it intimidate you. Probably not gonna be on the exam. Let's keep going. The whey proteins exist as individual units dissolved in the water milk phase. Okay, that's good to know. Nice little box there to remember. Deterioration of milk protein. Proteins can be degraded by enzyme action or by exposure to light. Wait a minute, that sounds like a question to me. You see how once you read something like that, proteins can be degraded by enzyme action or by exposure to light. That's a good little fact to know, that can be turned into a question. The predominant cause of protein degradation is through enzymes called proteases. I think that is, and they come from several sources: the native milk, airborne bacterial contamination, and bacteria that are added intentionally for fermentation or somatic cells. I would get to know that. This whole paragraph, probably good to know. I think we've read that before. Seems like that's already popped up again. Okay. Proteasis, I think that's pronounced, but definitely know that. Predominant cause of protein degradation is through enzymes called proteases. I think that's pronounced. I apologize. 2 amino acids in milk are sensitive to light that may be degraded exposure to light. That may be too much to know. Influence of heat treatment on milk proteins. The caseins are stable in heat treatment. I think we already covered that. Okay. Here we go. The whey proteins are more sensitive to heat than the caseins. High temperature, short time. Again, see how it's red right here? It didn't give you what it meant, but now you have to pick it out as you read along and know that it's high temperature, short time once you see that. It will not affect the nutritional and functional properties of the whey protein. Higher heat treatments may cause denaturization, but is the advantage of the production of some yogurts. You don't have to get as far as in that, but just know the top part. Vitamins and minerals in milk. These are good to know. Okay, this little graph here, that's kind of specific, but that's a those are some fun little facts they could ask about. Calcium, vitamin D, phosphorus, riboflavin, protein, vitamin B12, potassium, vitamin A, and niacin. I don't see a lot of questions about that. More so, it could it may be like, which one is not a mineral found in milk? And they could ask you something like that. So just have a little cheat card, not a cheat card, don't cheat, but I mean a flashcard about that. All right, and I don't think you need to know like how much. That's getting too specific. Just knowing that there's 9 and what the 9 are. Here we go. Minerals in milk. Minerals have many roles in the body, including enzyme functions, bone formation, water balance, maintenance, and oxygen transport. That's good. I don't think you need to know all that. I think you just need to know what they are. I think that is enough of that. Milk contains small amounts of copper, iron, magnesium, and sodium. That's fine. I don't think they're going to ask all that. I don't think they are. And it feels like this is kind of being a repeated effect of heat treatments and light exposure on the vitamin and mineral content in milk. I think you're going to get asked more about light exposure to a piece of cheese. If you work at a cheese shop and have ever experienced that, we call that bleaching. I feel like that's going to be more along the time. So this is probably too much. Let's keep going. Right. Only an hour more left of this. This is so great. Enzymes. Each enzyme has specific site of action on its target molecule. I believe this is too much. I would know this block, lipase, are enzymes that degrade fats, degrade proteins. So there's going to hurt lipolysis, you're going to hear soon, and proteolysis. Know that for one is fat and one is protein. That's what you need to remember. So anytime you see, because there's also going to be cultures that are going to be high heat, low heat, and deal with different things. So anytime lipolysis, that's fat. Lipids. Proteins or proteasis or proteolysis, they're proteins. That's your takeaway from all this. Alkaline phosphate is heat sensitive to milk. That's great, but I don't think you're going to ask that. I think this is too much. Okay, milk microbe. Whoop, we go back. Microbiology section. So dairy microbiology, milk is virtually sterile when it is synthesized in a healthy cow's udder or mammary gland. Cows, like humans, are natural reservoirs of bacteria. Many of these bacteria are not harmful to humans, but some may be harmful to humans, even though the cows are not affected and appear healthy. Beyond this stage of milk production, microbial contamination can generally occur from three main sources. This is a question. This is something you need to remember. From within the udder, from the exterior of the udder, and from the surface of the milk handling and storage equipment. So, microbial contamination can generally occur from three main sources. Within the udder, that's an infection. That's like mastitis. From the exterior of the udder, cows live in barns and are in fields in some areas that aren't clean. So if they drag their udder through mud or dirt and that's on the udder, that's a contaminant. And then from the surface of milk handling and storage equipment, if the milk handler does not wash their hands, or if the milk storage equipment is dirty, I feel like there's a high chance you get asking that, because that affects, again, the cleanliness of the milk. Contamination affects all of us in the cheese industry. Excellent. And here we go. Milk may be contaminated with bacteria during and after milking. The mammary gland of cows and humans can become inflamed due to bacterial infection called mastitis. Mastitis is a bacterial infection. That's what you need to know. So mastitis, I remember you will 100% be asked about mastitis. All righty. Everything okay? Am I going too fast? Want to make sure everybody's perfect. Good deal, good deal. So you're more than welcome to tell me to slow down. Sometimes I get really into it and just go, go, go. Let me know if I need to slow down or repeat something. But hopefully this is really helping you out. I think I'm doing a great job. The area of dairy, so mastitis, let's go back to that. During a mastitis infection, very high numbers of bacteria are present, can be in the udder and in the milk. Some disease-causing organisms or pathogens can be shed through cow feces and may contaminate the outside of the udder. Again, cows can be messy sometimes. They poop everywhere. Sometimes it's liquid. But it's got to be clean. That's why when you see people milking cows, they try to spray them off first. They have to clean the udder, clean their hands. The farm, the bedding may be contaminated, and the milking equipment. Although optimal growth conditions for bacteria are different for different organisms, milk contains important nutritional components for mammal growth, and therefore is also an ideal medium for the growth of many different bacteria. Temperature plays an important role in bacteria growth. Many bacteria prefer to grow at body temperature, but will grow at lower temperature at slower rates. The area of dairy microbiology is diverse. The bacteria present in dairy products may cause disease or spoilage. So bacteria may be specifically added. We talked about that. mastitis, know it. Also, just so you're aware too, is some of you may have visited dairy farms. That's great. If you haven't, there's a lot of talk about antibiotics. And I just want to point out as I'm, instructing and talking to you that, when the dairy cow gets mastitis or gets infection, they're pulled from the herd and given antibiotics. The thing is, if you don't give an animal antibiotics, they'll likely die. So it's not the fact that humans are giving animals antibiotics. It's just when they're not sick, you're giving antibiotics. Or if you don't pull that cow from the herd. So what happens is that cow will be pulled, isolated in a group close by, and given medication, and then milked separately, and then that milk is tossed. And that cow is given medication and is milked, and that milk is tossed until that infection is over and until the antibiotics are no longer in that cow's system. Once that happens, that cow goes back into the herd. So I just want to throw that out there. It's just a good thing to know. They try to do everything to protect the cows. They want them to live. But if you don't give a cow antibiotics when they're infected, they'll just pass away. Okay. Thermoduric and psychotropic. There we go. Both thermoduric, or that's bacteria that survive pasteurization, and psychotropic, bacteria that grow under refrigeration. Boom. 2 words you need to know. I remember more about psychotropic, bacteria that grow under refrigeration. That definitely needs to know. Strands of bacteria are commonly found on test surfaces, indicating that contamination of the exterior of the udder can influence. Just know that. Thermoduric, which are bacteria that survive pasteurization, and psychotropic, bacteria that grow under refrigeration. Know those 2 terms. The influence of dairy cows' total bacteria count depend on the extent of soil literacy. Of course, I mean, they could ask, like, what do you need to do to sanitize? So several studies have investigated pre-milking udder hygiene techniques in relation to the bacteria count of milk. Generally, though, cleaning of the teat with a sanitizing solution, which is a spray, wet towel, or dip, followed by thorough drying with a clean towel, is effective in reducing the number of microorganisms in milk contributed to soiled teats. That's good to know. That's easy enough to remember. I would definitely know that. Counts of coliform bacteria, although highly associated with manure, barnyard mud, and used in bedding, were relatively low in these studies. Okay, so just remember the first part. Pathogens. Okay, pathogens. They're what is it? Anybody, I don't know if you all ever watched the old Transformer cartoons in the 80s, but it has a great soundtrack with heavy metal bands. But there's a song called Instruments of Destruction. So if you ever see the old Transformers and like heavy metal, Instruments of Destruction, I think about that every time I come across pathogens in cheese. And if I were creative enough to make a cartoon and to train people about this, I would use that song. But you will have to know these pathogens. Write them down. This is imperative. In the past 20 years, foodborne illness from dairy consumption have been predominantly associated with Salmonella, Listeria, Campylobacter, and E. coli. So those 4 things will absolutely 1,000 billion trillion % be on this exam. They may not ask about every single one of them, but I dang well guarantee that you're going to come across at least 2. Because again, these affect all of us in the cheese industry. When reading, whether it's the book, whether it's Best Practice Guide for Cheesemaker, you got to be thinking, what affects all of us? These do. Pathogens affect us all. Okay. Enough preaching. I get on my soapbox. You're like, get off it, Nathan. So all of this is just good information, but we're going to get to the nitty gritty. Pathogens of concern. I'm not going to read that paragraph to you. Read this. So these pages are important to you. Listeria, you need to know. It's found in soil and water that has been isolated from a large number of environmental sources. It's destroyed by pasteurization. The thing is, you're going to need to know what it is, what destroys it, and even what symptoms you get from it. So to me, when I was like, I'm an old country boy that was educated in the state of Alabama, so it takes me a little longer to get some information sometimes to digest it. But get some flashcards and definitely write these out, because in some ways, like, once you get really sciencey, sometimes they can be confusing to some people. But you need to know this: it typically causes illnesses in pregnant adults, newborns, the elderly, and patients with compromised immune systems. But healthy adults and children can get affected too. Symptoms include flu-like symptoms. So, like, you're going to go listeria symptoms, flu-like symptoms, fever, muscle ache, stiff neck, headache. They're not going to try to trick you. They're all a little bit different. So you need to know all the aspects of these pathogens. I hope I've been very clear about this, and it's up to you to study it. All right, so listeria, you need to know symptoms. Yersinia, I would know that too. All of these in this pages, go to it. Know it. Campylobacter, found in the intestinal tract, the udder and feces of cattle. Because there's different ways they can ask this questions. They're going to say, which pathogen is found in the intestinal tract, udder, or feces of cattle? That could be a question. I don't know if it is or not, but you need to know that it's Campylobacter. You need to know the difference between all of them, where they're located, how you get them. All right. I'm not going to spend forever on this because this is going to be up to you to study it. I've been very clear that you need to know these. Hopefully after the exam, hopefully y'all come up and be like, Nathan, thank you. I needed to know that. There were questions. But again, I don't see the test questions. All right. So E. coli, there's several in here. Know the big ones. E. coli, you need to know that. Listeria, salmonella. Oh my God, salmonella is in the news every day. I hope that our government somehow keeps food regulation alive so we don't die. I'm not going to get on that soapbox. I'm sorry, but I'm scared about that. Salmonella, definitely know about that. I'm not going to read it all to you, but it's up to you. Know it inside and out. It develops 12 to 72 hours after exposure. It can last 4 to 7 days. Again, these I would, if you were writing flashcards, start with these. Okay. Right on. Roll Tide. Let's keep going. So here you go. I'm just going to keep going to the pages, and you all know that you have to know this. All right. And look at here's a good graph to help you out. This kind of shortens it in for you. You will also find this in the best practice guide for cheesemakers. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to get blue in the face, and you're going to hate hearing me to say that. Read the best practice guide for cheesemakers as well. All righty. Here we go. Other bacteria of significance. Excuse me. Coliforms are a large group of bacteria that are found in the intestines of warm-blooded animals. Most coliforms are not pathogenic, but their presence indicates contamination, usually from fecal sources. Coliforms are destroyed by pasteurization. All righty, that's definitely know that. Oh, let's go back. Psychiatrophic. I mentioned that before. Psychiatrophic. That is how you pronounce that. I know it. Bacteria are not a specific type or family of bacteria, but rather this is given the name to bacteria that are capable of growing at 44.6 degrees Fahrenheit or less. This group of microbes is a concern in dairy products because they grow at refrigerator temperature. That's what you need to remember. Psychotrophic bacteria grow at refrigerator temperature. That's what you need to know. They may throw the temperature out there, but the main thing is the psychotrophic is cold. However, you got to tell yourself to remember that. And you can kill it through pasteurization. Excellent. I'll go slow. Make sure you get that. That was on my exam for sure. All righty. Effects of species, breed, and composition on cheese. All cheesemakers agree that the quality of cheese begins with the quality of milk. But what is quality milk? One measure is the cheese making potential of milk, defined as the yield and quality of cheese produced from a unit of milk. The most significant factors affecting the cheese making potential of milk include bovine genes, environment, and physiological. These three factors are behind the differences in chemical and physical properties of milk that influence coagulation properties that in turn influence the quality of the yield of cheese. Yeah, to get a little sense of that. All right. Previous research suggests that milk composition, which is influenced by the breed of cow, has the greatest effect on the cheese yield capacity of milk. That's a good little fact. Probably know that. Dairy product systems, here we go. And ruminants. I hope by now everybody in this study group and paying attention and watching this video know what a ruminant is. This is, again, one of those 100,000% ruminant will be on your exam in one shape or other. That's whose milk we drink. That is the milk we turn into cheese. It all goes back to ruminants. Ruminants are mammals that acquire nutrients from a plant-based diet through a specialized product. Fermentation in the first of the four compartments of the stomach, regurgitation of chewed food to the breakdown of fibers, and digestion. So here we go. So know these parts. Every bit here, I'll just go ahead and tell you, know this. This is the abomasum is the fourth stomach. So the fourth stomach is called the abomasum. Look at here, you can see it's a small picture, but there you go. There are three categories of ruminants distinguished by diet: grass only, grass plus other things, and mostly other things. I don't remember much about the categories of ruminants, but the fact that we're all having ruminants, and that cow, goat, sheep, water buffalo, all of those are ruminants. Goats and sheep are considered concentrated selective feeders since they eat a wider variety of food. The ruminant digestive system breaks down milk when young and develops later to digest fiber. So here we go, some happy cows. We all know they eat grass. Milking animals. I'm just going to go over, I'm not going to read every bit of this to you, but just continue going. The cow tongue is long and dexterous to wrap around plant parts. Cows prefer to graze on rolling land. The act of chewing takes up about 8 hours of the animal's day. Oh, God, that's great. You know, you got a happy cow and it's just hanging out, chewing its cud, right? And cows live about 10 to 12 years. Okay, sheep utilize their lips and teeth as a primary eating tool. Cows reach with their tongue and rip. Sheep, they use their lips and their teeth as eating tools. Their mouth structures allows them to bite closer to the ground, to be more selective about the amount eaten. After 5-month gestation period, dairy use milk from lambing season. Lambing season is from January until May. That's probably a good thing to know. Lambing season. January through May with sheep. Breeding used to lamb earlier in the calendar year will increase lactation length. They may get a little bit into this, but I think they're more like dairy ewes produce 400 to 1,100 pounds of milk per year. That's more of a fact that they would ask about. Okay, those sheep live about 10 to 12 years. I don't remember much about how long animals live. I think that's probably a waste of a question if you only have 150 questions to ask about the entire dairy and cheese making industry, but it's just good for you to know. Goats are browsers. Goats feed on woolly shrubs, trees, leaves, flowers, pastures, and anything. Goats will eat anything. They're so cute. Their mouth structures, including a nimble upper lip, it allows them to avoid thorns and spines. So that's it. They live about 15 to 18 years. Let's get to breed of animal impact on milk composition. Here we go. There's going to be graphs to this. So this information is good written like this, but in the best practice guide for cheesemakers, and there's other graphs out there that talk about lactation cycle, how long it is. So know, I'm going to just give you a hint. Know about lactation cycles, cow, goat, and sheep. Know the months. So after calves peak at 250 days, milk production begins to decrease. So around 250 days, cows lactate. Just pull out those little informations from here. Season dramatically affects milk fat and protein. That's true, but I don't think they're necessarily going to get into that on this exam. Mastitis infections, again, absolutely anytime you see mastitis, read about it. Reduce fat and casein, but increase blood protein and content of milk. We want to pull that. So here, I got a line that says the component value is reduced. So mastitis infection reduce fat and casein, but increase the blood protein content in milk. Somatic cell count. I mentioned that before. You will get asked, yes, about somatic cell count. Also is elevated during mastitis. Herds that have continuous mastitis and SCC problems, so you got to know what somatic cell count, you got to know the acronym. There's a billion acronyms in the world. Problems take a double or triple hit on the milk price. The component value is reduced, plus some federal orders. There is a deduction for somatic cell count over 350,000. There is a graph in the best practice guide for cheesemakers that lists the allowable somatic cell counts for the animals, for the different breeds. Go to that and know that graph. And it may be here. I keep going. There we go. Average lactation. Oh my God, we got it here for you. All the lactation. Just know this graph. Get a yield of it. Cow, goat, sheep. Perfect. The fat components. I don't know if necessarily you're going to get asked the specific components, chemical components, but know that sheep has a higher fat content. Look at it. It's double the fat content in cows and goat. Water buffalo is very close. And look at the protein. Sheep milk has more protein. It's got as much lactose as cows. It's got more minerals. And it's got less water. So sheep milk is really condensed, right? I love it. It's so fatty. I love the cheese. But know these graphs, have an insight out of it. Animal weight. Animal weight is not as important, but milk production per year, this middle one, that's a good one to know. And milk production efficiency of milk, that's good, but I think more about the milk production. Cows give about 18,000 pounds. All right, here we go. We're going to keep going. I see no questions, so we'll keep moving. All right, let's just read through this. I think this is good, but I'm reading it and I don't see this is good stuff, but not as to be questions on your exam. Okay, good to know. Rumen function, let's look at this. The relative amounts of protein and energy that are available in the rumen at a given time is the major factor affecting rumen fermentation and therefore milk components. Good sentence to know. Any diet or management factors that affect rumen fermentation can change milk fat and protein levels. Again, this is really good to know, but know that there is a rumen. I think that's more likely what's going to be on your exam. And the function. Feeding management. Any situation that causes cows to eat abnormally or limits feed intake may affect milk components. Of course, what you eat affects what comes out. Absolutely. And also knowing that cows need to be comfortable. Animals need to be well tended to and comfortable to be able to really release the milk and to give good quality milk. Cows don't like being stressed. They don't like being too hot. Those are things to remember. Proper body condition is essential so that high producing cows can draw on body stores of nutrients to support milk production. That's great. I think body condition is cool. I think there's a graph for big boys like me, or basically like what is the cat graph where cats reach chunk size. I don't think they really ask as much about the body size of cows. Okay, so it's good to know, but maybe don't spend all your time reading about that. Energy in general, as energy intake or ration energy density increases, the fiber decreases. This is good to know, but I think it's too much. I think this is really specific information. Please read over it, but don't spend days on it. protein effects. I think this is good. I'm with you. I'm just reading through here. This is all good to know, but I think this is, I don't think you're going to be asked all of this. Concentrate intake. Good to know, but I feel like that's too specific. Okay, let's keep going. Forwards level, the physical form. Again, this is good to know, but I feel like it's so specific. Adding fat to the ration can affect milk component levels depending on the amount of source of fat. Fat is generally toxic to rumen microbes and may reduce fiber digestibility. Good to know, but again, I don't remember any of this on the exam. Let's keep going. Extreme high milk fat. Let's see what this has to say. High milk fat content often occurs in herds that are often feed and have ketosis problems. Good to know. Read it. Don't spend days on it. The first cattle in the Western Hemisphere arrived with Christopher Columbus on his second voyage. Other cows began to arrive along with settlers from Europe and followed the pioneers westward. So cows are not indigenous to North America. So that's the main thing to remember there. I don't remember getting asked about Christopher Columbus, but it's fun to know. All right. Louis Pasteur. I would know who that is. Pasteurization is a huge component in our field of dairy lovers. So Louis Pasteur, I would know about him. What did Louis Pasteur find out? What did he discover? It's right there. We've been talking about it for about an hour and a half. Pasteurization. Thank you. Pasteurization. So that affects us all. You will get asked about pasteurization. Perfect. The process of pasteurization, development of breeds, association, promoted of genetics. You don't need to get all that. Just know he came up with pasteurization. I don't even think you need to know exactly how it happened. That's great to know, though. It's good. It's good fun. And may get asked for trivia, maybe on Jeopardy one day. But just know that he and pasteurization go hand in hand. As the dairy industry grew, for the first half of the 20th century, large numbers of cows and dairy herds located in the Great Lakes region of the United States. This area is very suitable for pasturing cattle. That's just a fact, but not really a question. Yeah, that's good. I don't think you're going to ask quite much into that history. The history that you would get asked about. Oh, work on my camera. Oh, goodness. My background is shutting it out. But I'm holding up a book called Cheese and Culture. Cheese and Culture by Paul Kensett. My virtual background is messing me up. But Cheese and Culture, you will get asked history questions from that book. Okay? And hopefully we'll get to spend some time on it in a future class. Okay. Life cycle of production phases. Go through, read this. This is fun. The stages of lactation. This is the meat of the matter. Dairy cows are listed of having a 305-day lactation. That's important. That's the concise information that could be asked on your test. Early lactation, mid lactation. Know that early lactation would be when the milk production is on an upswing after calving, and it lasts for about 60 to 80 days. And then mid lactation is when the milk production is relatively stable, or more properly dropping off slowly. So there's a curve to it, and it'll be in the graph. And then late lactation, drying off. Dairy cattle are typically dried off 60 days before calving, so they got about 2 months off where they hang out and they're drying off. Although sometimes there's that one that has a long lactation cycle. So those are the basic things. Just know the overview with that, and I think you'll be quite fine. Okay. Natural weaning, drying off dairy animals, drying off sheep, drying off goats. Read through this. I'm putting this on you. The onus is on you to read through it. You could get a question about all of this, but I don't feel like you're not going to get asked like 1,000 questions from this information. but it's good to know about the drying off and those procedures. All right, so dairy goats, so like what you'd pull out of here is dairy goats have 300-day lactation cycle. But do know their lactation cycles. I'm pointing that out. Do know their lactation cycles. All righty. Dairy cows. They are so beautiful. Look at these ladies. Know the overview of different breeds of cows. You're not gonna have to, you're not gonna, they're not gonna get so deep diving into it, but brown Swiss, well, they're from brown Swiss. They originated the slopes of Switzerland, right? Know that. And I think knowing, let's go through large brown cattle that are known for their docile manner, high milk protein to fat ratio, sound feet and legs, and purported resistance to heat, stress in hot and humid regions. That's a good little bit of chunk to know. The main thing is high protein to milk fat ratio. So brown Swiss cows have high protein. That's a good thing to remember. All right, but do read through this. Highlight, pick out the biggest points of there. The average annual output for brown Swiss cows in Wisconsin is about 18,800 pounds. I don't think you're going to ask specifically that. With 4.1% fat and 3.37% protein. That would go on my flashcard. All right. All right, let's see what we got here. And browns, if you think of it, brown Swiss cows, their milk makes better Alpine cheeses, right? If you think about it, it's already given to you. They're from Switzerland. The cheeses from Switzerland are Alpine cheeses. So they lend themselves with the fat and the protein makeup, make good Alpine style cheeses. Of the 6 breeds of cows, Ayrshire, brown Swiss, Guernsey, Holstein, Jersey, and Milking Shorthorn, the Holstein and brown Swiss are the biggest. The average weight of both are 1,500 pounds, which they may reach in as little to 2 years. So there you go. This also gives you some major breeds of cows I would focus on these 6. Jersey. Hey, I got a joke for you. All right, let's see if it still works. What does a Jersey cow say? Moo. Right? No? Okay. You got to do a little accent. It's the only joke I've ever written. It's not that great, but hang in there, guys. You got to laugh because I'm helping you out. Jersey is a second most popular cow in the U.S. She's known for her smaller size. She's a little dainty, and higher percentages of fat and protein in her milk. Early maturity and efficiency in milk production. So she makes a little higher percentages of fat. So some of your fattier cheeses go great with Jersey. So read all through this. This is good to know. The average annual output for Jersey cows in Wisconsin is 16,835 pounds of milk. They're not going to ask you that. Just know it's high, with a 4.84% fat and 3.9% protein. That's your kicker. That's what you want to know. Jerseys are known for producing milk with high content of milk fat and milk proteins. Boom. That's your major information, especially suited for cheese production. Perfect. Right. Holstein, again, I'm just going to hit the highlights for you. We're going to keep rolling through this. Read through this. Know on average their fat, and the main thing is their fat and their protein makeup. It kind of lends, like different breeds of cows lend to making excellent different types of cheese, right? So read through that. That's on you to read. Let's see here. Yeah, you guys can read all that. Know their fat and protein percentages and what types of cheeses are good for them, and you'll be good. Total mixed ration feeding systems. Know about that. There we go. This is, now we're getting somewhere else. Total milk, TMR. Right? Total mixed ration systems continue to expand in use in the dairy system. They're really everywhere now. This is a little bit older information, but just know what that stands for. This is where you're going to get a little bit more things put together. So the average output of Holstein cows in Wisconsin, we got that. All right. Guernsey, again, keep reading through this on your own, but we do know a little bit about them. They will ask you. You're not going to get asked about each one of these is the thing, but they're going to stick one or two questions about cow breeds in there. And especially when we don't know how much we're going to hit into sheep today or get to with goats, but any cheeses that are particularly protected protected cheeses, know what cow breeds that comes from. Some that aren't mentioned here, so like Comté. Comté, you can only make Comté with milk from two particular cows in France. Is it French Seminole and come on, brain work, Montelobillard. So no, like Comté was on my test. I'm just throwing that out there. But know the milk types for that. Know the milk type that makes up Manchego, right? It's the American Cheese Society, but they have the right to ask questions about all the cheeses in the world. And I always tell people when you're focusing on the cheeses of the world, focus on the big dogs, focus on the main ones, Reggiano, Roquefort, Manchego, the great big ones. Is they're going to spend more time asking about that. But my point with the breeds is if there's a cheese that's protected, I have an understanding of what that breed is. You know, Manchego is a Manchega sheep. That should be nice and easy for you. Okay, so no Guernsey. Dutch belted, they're cute. I don't remember a question about Dutch belted. I think we're getting specifically milking shorthorn is great. I would know these, but I wouldn't spend a year on them. I think there's so many other Ayrshire. I think it's a bigger breed of cow to know. I'm going to keep going. Cowfax. Let's see what Cowfax. So here you see that all this stuff was referenced from Paul Kensett, an American Farmstead Cheese. That's one of your books that suggested reading. But Paul Kensett also wrote Culture in Cheese. It's also a good read if you want to know a lot about the history. Cowfax: a cow is a mature female and a bull is an adult male of the bovine family. Oh my God, that's great. A heifer is a young female cow that hasn't calved yet. A cow that can't produce milk until she's had a cow. You can't produce milk until you had a calf. Cattle is a name for cow family. Know these. These seem pretty easy. I don't know if you're going to ask about this, but it's good to know. And now we got to goats. So I mentioned a little bit about that. You got different goat breeds: Nubian, Alpine, Sanin, Tottenberg, and La Mancha. Know all of these. And here you go. Next page. It's more about fat and protein. Just be familiar with the different breeds. And these, again, these make great flashcards. Go through here, make you a little flashcard with each one of them. If it mentions which cheese specifically goes into that, definitely have that on there. La Mancha, Nubian. So I'm going to leave this to you. I'm not going to read all about them. This is up to you to read. Tottenberg, Sanin. There were a couple, I remember on my exam, a couple of questions about goats. I can't remember which goats they were. But again, you're not going to get asked so many questions about particular breeds. Okay, so don't freak out. Just read through it. I'm going to keep moving along. Sheep, same way. Dairy breeds. The main thing I would remember about sheep again is they give more fat and more protein. That's the main thing to remember. Lambing. So you guys read through this. Pasturing. Yeah, this is good information, but yeah, I would definitely read it, but don't spend a year on it. Legume sheep. I would know legume sheep. That's Roquefort. And I would also know Roquefort. Roquefort is the first cheese to earn its protected designation of origin. I would know about Rogue 4. I'd know Rogue 4 inside and out. It's striking. It's a good sheep, and not necessarily about, there's myths, and stories about how it came about, but no Rogue 4. You could get asked at least a couple of questions about that. Okay, so we're going to keep going. You guys are going to read your sheep. You're going to read about your animals, but they're not going to, I don't think they're going to get that deep on breeds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I don't think they're going to get that deep. So we're going to keep moving. Manchego, the thing is, like Manchego though, like with Manchego, that's a big one. So hopefully I'm not trying to skim over this and make you feel like it's unimportant, but know the big ones. The big ones. Manchego is huge because it's specific to a cheese. Legume is specific to a cheese. All right. We're going to keep going. This is so much fun. Oh my God, so many different types of sheep. It's not an animal husbandry test. Just remember that. It's not what it's about. But water buffalo, I would get something about water buffalo. Good thing there's only like one species of water buffalo, and that's water buffalo. It presents features different that from the other ruminant species, such as higher content of fatty acids and proteins, physical and chemical parameters of swamp and river water. Let's see, buffalo are the second largest source of milk supply. Of the 38.5 million tons of world milk production, India produces 23.6%. I don't think you're going to get to know even that. Just know that water buffalo exist. They're hard to milk because they're really temperamental, and they have much higher fat and protein contents. And they tend to, from my experience, because of their milk protein and fat content, they make great softer cheeses. Cheeses I've been spoke to, of course, water buffalo mozzarella. The first mozzarella ever created was water buffalo. But then I think of a lot of Italian cheeses, quadrello di bufala. A lot of buffalo milk are kind of creamy and pungent and a little bit softer. Excellent. So you do have camel, horse. There's a book called Milk, which is a great read. But I remember reading in it, and it said that the milk most easily digestible by humans and more similar to human makeup of milk is donkey milk. Fun fact, not on your test, but a fun fact. And the thing is, they're not going to ask. I don't feel. You read this. I don't think they're going to ask you about camel, horse, or yak milk cheeses. We Americans have much less exposure to that. Good to know and have in the back of your mind. But again, don't spend a whole heck of a lot of time studying specifically those. The term alpage, tattoo that on your back of your hand. The term alpage, you need that. Oh my God, it's like I'm giving you the whole test. Holy crap. But the term alpage is employed by some European cheesemakers to refer to the milk from animals that have grazed on high alpine pastures as opposed to grain or silage. That was on my test, I'm just going to say. How the question they may ask, I don't know, but know the definition and know that one. Whenever you see the term alpage, pay attention. Excellent. And it's good to know the grazing, but I don't think they're not going to ask so many questions about this. It's good to know cows use their tongue to rip the grass and all that stuff. I would know, though, the actual chewing portion of a cow's day consists of 8 hours, and ruminating takes about 12 hours. That's good to know. This little box is a fun box of quick, easy information to write down. All of them, the seasonality, terroir. Terroir could be asked. Translated into cheese-making name, terroir could encompass pasture lands whose flora are selected for by ruminant grazing and human management, practices of animal husbandry, ambient microorganisms, directly or indirectly selected for hygienic practices. Terroir could be too nebulous of a term to spend a lot of time on. We focus a lot more on terroir and wine. Know and understanding it's a taste of place. And I would say if there's anything to really know about terroir, is the only way you can get a taste of place is if you had grass-fed milk, where they really focus on keeping the microorganisms of the land in the milk. So terroir to me would have to be raw milk, traditional rennet. By traditional, I mean animal rennet and grass-fed. Those are components I think will be important to remember about that. All right, we're going to keep going. Only got a couple more minutes here with you, and I want to cover as much as possible. Rotational grazing, absolutely. Rotational grazing is important. This is something old world pasture that is being implemented more in the United States now as we go through, because it helps the soil, helps replenish the soil. And that's where we need to get to as a farming industry. I'm going to climb off that soapbox, but rotational grazing, I put that down in your notes to study. Seasonality refers to the ability of milk due to animal lactation cycles. Milk composition and volume are affected by the season, particularly in milder climates such as Australia and New Zealand, where cows are pasture fed all year round. Milk production drops during the winter months of May to August in the southern hemisphere to a level such that there is little access to milk. Seasonality, have a good idea about that. Oh, and here's the term alpage again. I'll be danged. Grain-based diets, silage. Milk from cows that are fed silage may contain butyric acid bacteria. These can lead to cheeses blowing and crevices in the cheese during the production of hard cheeses and semi-hard cheeses. Silage, the one thing particular to remember, Alpine style cheeses. So Alpine style cheeses, they're alpage, they're grass fed. You never give out, you don't want silage fed to cows when you're producing Alpine style cheeses. I've heard that from Mateo, Keller, Jasper, and I've heard that from cheesemakers of Springbrook Farm, particularly. But blowing, know what the term silage is and know what the term blowing. Blowing means, like, the thing is, there's just so much gas, it cracks the wheel inside in half. So when you cut into that cheese, there's just a long crack and a gap in it. That's a good question for a test. And here's terroir again. Concepts inherent in the land. I know it. I just don't know. I don't know if it's a fair question, because I'm not going to get on that soapbox. But the thing is, cheese comes from milk. Milk, terroir, and milk should be more easily figured out than in cheese. But know what terroir is. Milk yields. Here you go. Nice little fun graph. Boom. There's your cheat sheet. Just like that. And they may not ask you specifics, but they may ask, like, which one has highest fat content. Look at Jersey. Jersey's leading the way. High and above. Okay, so just know that. Milk regulations. Let's keep going. I've only got a few minutes left. Milking barn. Read through this. Again, the main thing is you want to make it clean. Clean, 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 clean. Areas used for milking purposes shall. Read the bullet points there are a good point to remember. You could ask one, maybe two questions about this. And we're going to keep going. The milk house construction and facilities. A lot of this came from the best practice guide for cheesemakers. Again, I mentioned that 12 times today. Read that and you'll get even more information from there. All right, because they will ask you a couple of questions. This isn't just a test for cheesemongers. So you need to know about the milking barn, the milking parlor, and some of the safety regulations that they have to follow, again, because that focuses, that affects all of us in our dairy world. Excellent. So we're going to keep going. Cleanliness, read about that. They may not ask you about the toilet, but they may ask you about water supply. So we're going to keep going. I would just say read this. And again, the section in Best Practice Guide for Cheesemakers will give you much more detailed information, and you're more likely to get asked a question from that. Utensils and storage. The one thing I remember about all of this in the milking parlor, the term biophage. Biophage. I don't see it here right now, but as I only have a couple minutes left with you in this area, that is a key term. It's in your glossary. It should already be in your glossary, but biophage. Look for that. That's a term that I think you should remember. All right. Public health. We know that. Washing your hands. Here you go. Raw milk cooling. This is a good one. Raw milk for pasteurization shall be cooled to 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit or less within 4 hours or less. Probably could be read better, but just know that you've got to bring raw milk down to 50 degrees within 4 hours. That's probably a good thing to remember. All righty, and we'll keep going. You know, you don't want insects. Starter cultures. Starter culture, know about those. The culture added to the milk to accelerate the cheese making process by triggering fermentation. That's what they do. Bacteria in the culture of the milk consume the milk's lactose, producing lactic acid, which makes milk more acidic, creating the best climate for the curd to form. Know about starter cultures. You will 100% get asked about starter cultures. Know them inside and out. We need to spend more time on that. Cultures also play a key role in aroma, texture, and flavor generated in the cheese as it matures. That's absolutely key. Excellent. So know everything. Using cheese making, know all of these bullet points. Proteolytic enzymes contribute to the development of fat. So know these bullet points. That's good to know. Purpose of cultures. And know that cultures occur naturally. Some cultures, milk can be left out, like cultures for Reggiano. They leave a little bit of milk left over from the day's cheese making, and they let it sit overnight. And in the morning, cultures have grown in it, and they use that milk. Or you can have cheeses, places like I've been to Sartori in Wisconsin. They have their own culture house inside their facilities, and they make their own culture. Or you can buy culture from culture houses. So culture can happen naturally. You can make your own cultures, or you can buy cultures online or from a culture house. So know everything there are. Mesophilic and thermophilic. Boom, boom, boom. Yes, you need to know that. Mesophilic is non-heat loving. They do not like the heat. Thermophilic love the heat. Know that. Those are the best ones. So mesophilic and thermophilic cultures, yes, 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 on your test. And know about the acid production. All of this I say is I would spend more time on this than the breeds. Just saying. The breeds are fun. Read them, know it. But this you have to know. Flavor production, lactic acid producing bacteria are used for cheese making. Homeofermentive bacteria primarily used for producing lactic acid. Know those. I don't remember so much about homeolactic and heterofermentive versus mesophilic and thermophilic. I remember those two specifically. All right, but know it all. And here, as far as like starter cultures may be categorized as mesophilic, for example, you don't need to get that specific. You don't need to get that specific. Don't freak out. Just know mesophilic. Know the big terms. Thermophilic. Know that it's temperature driven. Which one's cold and which one's hot. Okay, and probably know those degrees. But as far as like being able to pick out the specific thermophilic cultures, you don't have to know that. That's too much. Don't bog your head down with that. All righty. Rods versus Kokaki. That's good to know. I don't think it's on your test. I think it's good to know, but I would again know thermophilic and mesophilic. Know that. What cheeses they go to. Their forms. Here you go. Important reference terms regarding cultures. Absolutely know these. Acidifier, proteolysis. I mentioned that earlier. Proteolytic. Know all these. Culture houses. Prepare to know about that. There you go. So you'll read through this. These are important. You're not going to get asked about everything in here, of course, but cultures are extremely important in the cheese making process. So you will get asked about that. Excellent. Here we go. Bacteriophage, the term I mentioned earlier. That's how you spell bacteriophage on page 62. All right. Let's just keep going. All of this is good information. Storing and handling cheese, storage issues. Here we go. I would know what annatto is, why it's used. All right. I don't think they ask a lot about a lot of other color alternatives. I wouldn't spend as much there. But annatto, that's pretty big in our work, right? Sources of colors. I think this may be too much. Natural colors in cheese, you would want to go, but retinol, I don't think that's going to be on there. Preventing color phase, I would know that. Oh my God, time is up. Here we go. Calcium chloride, coagulant. Any of these terms, read through for sure. Hold on, I'm going to try to go quickly. Lipase, definitely on your test. And this is good. I wouldn't spend too much time all on that. Salt, you'll need to know different types of salt. Sorry to have to rush through, team. If you have to go, I understand. I'm just going to quickly finish up with this section. And again, if you have to go, it will be recorded that you can look at. No brine soaked. These are all fun information. Know that feta is preserved, and no halloumi. Halloumi has a specific way of being made. Look that up. Halloumi, and I would know about where it comes from. And we're going to continue on. We're almost to the end. Oh my God. The use of salt and brine. I think all you hopefully know what brine is by now. Flavoring. I don't know if they ask a lot of questions about flavoring. And I think since this was written, more flavors have been introduced to cheese. Breve bacterium linens. Oh my God. So these rinds, rind cultures, Breve bacterium linens. What type of cheese is that on? Wash rind cheese. You got to know that. Geotrichum. You need to know that. That's going to be, Geotrichum, Breve bacterium linen, Penicillium candidum, Penicillium roqueforti. All of these molds are huge. Definitely know those. Yeah, blue cheese, bloomy rind cheese, stinky bloomy rind, and wash rind, all right there. All righty. Know the makeup here: water, carbohydrate, fat, protein, minerals has got to be coming up, vitamins. These not so much. Riboflavin, I remember questions about that, but these are just good definitions. This is the glossary. So you are accountable for knowing your glossary. And there we go. Milk allergies. I would say they would ask more about lactose intolerance than milk allergies. There could be a milk allergy question, but lactose intolerance is more of an issue in our industry than allergies. So there you go. Milk and lactose intolerance. That's important to read. So we could definitely go through that. Raw milk consumption, read through that, but just know what you can get if you get raw milk consumption. And oh my goodness. This is all good to know. This was too much information, and there we go. Woo! So that is the first one. I hope this helps. Again, I'm not here to necessarily teach you new things, because hopefully you're at a good point. But my whole goal for you joining my study group is for me to help narrow down your field of study, and I hope I've helped in that way. If you have any questions or suggestions, I'm always available. All of you should have my email by now. I do my best to to respond, to answer questions. There were a couple of questions from the last one asking about the virtual exam. My committee has asked me really to hold off on answering a lot of questions about the virtual exam because you will get help through that. But one of the questions is, can you go past questions and come back? One thing I was told by our virtual committee subcommittee was that the virtual is given in two parts. So, and you'll get a better explanation than what I give. I'm actually there for the physical exam. But there's two parts to the virtual exam where it's like 75 questions, and then you could take a break, but you cannot go back. Apparently, you got to finish one section before you go to another. But there will be a better explanation at the time of the test to help you with that. So that was it. Thank you all very much. I hope you all have a very good weekend. I wish you all to be safe and happy. Continue to spread the love of good cheese and our great American dairy producers and cheesemakers. And thank you all cheesemongers out there for your hard work. All right. I love you. I wish you well. And I'm going to stop recording. And you'll soon get an email and another invite for another study group soon. Thank you very much.